Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another Calibre Wings live stream with me, Noel Lee. Thank you so much for joining the live stream tonight. So tonight we're gonna, the last time we did a live stream, we went into like 2 hours and 40 minutes. So tonight we'll try to keep it within the hour. So today I'm just gonna be going through a few things to share with you guys as we continue to bring information and updates to all our base. So if I may, I'm going to be going through a little bit about the company profile. So I'm going to share with you a little bit more about the company itself. And then I'm going to touch a little bit more about the days before Calibre Wings was launched. And then, of course, back to the Calibre Wings brief history. And then we'll touch a little bit about the F-14B and D's new tooling that we just announced a day or two ago. All right. And since many of you have been asking about the fittest progress, we'll be sharing with you a little bit about the fittest tooling progress. And then finally, if we have some time at the end, we will talk about Calibre Wings versus the fake news critics, if we have time. All right. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. And of course, I'll be posting a link that you can actually come into our StreamYard studio and you can interact with me. I would love to, have a chat with you. So I'll put that link into the comments section and you can actually come in and we can have a chat. Along the way, I'll be seeing your comments and, I will answer the questions as and when I see them once I finish the section. So in the meantime, I will just put that invite link into the comments. And all right. So you'll be able to click on that link. Now, if you were to come onto our show, so please note that you need to have a set of earphones. And of course, we ask that you close the window that is currently playing this live stream. Otherwise, the audio exchange between myself and you would cause interference and a loop. So that's not too good. All right. So without further ado, let's see who's in the stream today. We have Mr. Sapling again. Thank you very much for joining. Cornelio, thanks to see you again. Samuel Leong is in the house. Garrett Greener is in the house. All right, so let me go ahead to talk about company profile. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's go share the screen. All right. And I'm going to share this. Okay, so Calibre Wings was previously, we started off as Calibre Toys. And this is a little bit of me when I was at the Las Vegas Licensing Expo. That was back in 2014. So we started out doing licenses with Transformers. And these were among the first products that we made. With the Transformers license, we did some coin banks, some figure carabiners. And then, of course, we continued designing and making concepts. And one of our products was actually used as a premium for Toys R Us with DHL promotion. And our magnet light-up hits were also used as a premium for the Malaysian cinema golden screen. So those are back in the day. Also, in Hong Kong, our the hits of our coin banks were actually used and revised as a little bus that was used also as a premium for Caltex. And also we did some little figures on carabiners that is currently being sold in Universal Studios Singapore. Yeah, it's still selling right now. Along the way, we also designed some very colorful, fancy tumblers. So we have Puss in Boots there on the left, Madagascar, Minions, Jurassic Park, and so on. The first time we actually really did die-cast models aircraft was for this air show in 2014 in Singapore. And this is actually a premium by the Civil Aviation Authority of Singapore. It's an A380 with a special livery that was designed by them. So I was involved with the OEM project that actually delivered this model in 1:400 scale. And some other products that we did for Universal. And finally, the collaboration with Toynami for the 30th anniversary Robotech. And we actually were involved in designing these chibi figures in PVC. So, all right. So that's so much for the company profile. Okay. So we're going to move on to talk a little bit about the days before Calibre. Let me just see if there's any comments at the moment to right now. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about, let's see. There we go. All right. So before, Calibre was done, I was actually doing some work with Popbox Collectibles. So there you see me in front of some displays. So what we did back then was we did iRobot statues. Well, it's kind of a bus. So for those of you who know about this movie, iRobot, that is the NS5. So I was involved in the design of that, doing the prototype. Those are prototypes that I've colored. These are the NS5, if I'm not mistaken. Or NS4, sorry, NS4. And again, with our connection with Toynami, we actually did a bunch of 1:6 scale figures from the animation Macross. And those you see there in blue uniforms. That's Max Genius. So these figures actually come with a Toynami body, and we stitch on the little uniform that they are wearing with fabric. And also, a pride project that we did was the pilot suit. So the helmet is made from PVC, ABS, and the rest of the armor in PVC. So that's a project that I fondly remembered being very part of, right from the designing of the helmet to the production. And also we're also involved in some Marvel statue painting. Yeah, so that is a little bit about myself before I entered into Calibre Wings, right? So I'm gonna remove that. All right. So now we move on to the brief history. So again, I'm going to share the screen with you guys. Okay. Okay. So this company profile is specific to Calibre Wings. When we were pitching the licenses with the agents, we were describing to them who we are. So of course, I've showed them the projects that we've done before, and why we are unique. I always love this quote from Steve Jobs. It says, "The only way to do great work is to love what you do." And Calibre Wings is the foundation. It's built on loving what we do, and thus being able to deliver the best products that we can produce, and having the nurtured passion for the industry of hobby goods since 1991, as well as being hands-on on scale models. We can provide invaluable R&D and our manufacturing process. So in case some of you don't know, our first ever project was the 1:144 scale F-16C. and this was in conjunction with Singapore's 50th anniversary celebrations, SG50. So I was especially happy and proud to be able to make this project in time for the SG50 celebrations. So what better way when the Singapore RSAF's F-16C Black Knights were involved in the aerial display during National Day. So this commemorative set is, a very nice memorabilia to celebrate that event. So that's how we actually got started, because we, didn't have the tooling of this particular aircraft, and this was already available as a 144 scale tooling from Witty Wings. So we were able to find the factory that did this tooling, and we basically, this is an OEM project, and we OEM the tooling, and we produce this based on our colors and our design. And we started off, of course, with the F-14 model, and I can still remember very fondly when I was bringing the prototype to Shizuoka's hobby show without really having any hope, because our previous attempt, the first project, the Black Knights, it's actually it's a subject that's more catered towards Singapore itself, so it's not really something that is widely accepted worldwide. So we had a bit of trouble trying to sell said model. So when we did the F-14, going to Shizuoka, I was a little bit apprehensive on what the response would be, but apparently, it was how we actually took off. So I actually had this plan before, and I'm showing to you guys. This is the first time I'm actually showing on a public space. We definitely went on to embark on the following projects that you see right there on the screen. So following the F-14 was the Su-24 Fencer, and we did that. And the F-16 Viper, we did that as well. But along the way, we had planned to do the Su-25 Frogfoot, as well as the C-130 Hercules in 1:72 scale. No kidding. But I guess now in hindsight, it's a massive project. And the fact that if it's going to be all die cast, it's really something that is out of this world. The fanboy like myself would want to have it produced, but when we talk about economies of scale, we talk about feasibility of the project, wanting to have something that is seamless in terms of no gaps, about showing when it's a 72 scale, you want to make sure that the entire cargo bay is shown. You can't discount the fact that the cockpit has to have sufficient details. So, it's something that was initially contemplated. I had the dream to do it, but currently we don't have the expertise and know how to execute it. All right. So, I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to look at the chat to see if you got any comments there. So, all right, Cornelio, you said you're interested in the new F-16 Wave and the new F-14 tooling. Sure, we'll have more information as we come along. So when is your birthday, Cornelio? We'll get you a discount for that. All right, Mr. Subbilling, same. So Cornelio, I keep your first F-16 Wave and the Ali Cat in my office. Thank you very much for that. Mr. Sapling, is F-16 good? Yeah, I would think so. Oh, you're a lawyer, and I'm sure you do great work for your clients. Thank you very much. Let's spread the love. Okay, so let's now move on to our next topic, which is the new tooling F-14B and D. Now, to do this, I have a special, there's already a call-in guest waiting in the studio, so I'm going to bring him on right now. All right, so, hey, Unza, can you hear me?
Yes, hi, Noel, everybody. So can you hear me as well?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much for joining me.
All right, well, really nice to be here. And so, yes, this is Ozer, and Noel and I have been speaking for some time. I'm a collector of die-cast models, a very diverse collection, I should say, but I love the Tomcat. So it's not a surprise that for me, the Calibre's F-14 is really special. And I'm engaging often with Noel in giving feedback and also, discussing the positives and things which, of course, can constantly be improved. So yesterday's announcement from you, Noel, was really exciting about the plan changes on the B and D. So of course, that was just a few bullet points, and I have a number of questions to ask whenever you're ready, which perhaps,
Hey, hold on. Am I
yeah,
pronouncing your name correctly? Is that Unza? Can
yeah.
you say your
So,
name?
so in this audience, it may be especially relevant when people ask me how to pronounce. If you know the American airline U.S. Airways, that's written as U.S. Air. So my name is Ozair, and you just pronounce it as Ozair.
Oze. Okay. So
Ozair.
it's
Yes.
okay. So I've
Yeah.
been pronouncing it wrong all this time. So sorry about that.
That's fine. No, no, that's fine. I mean, this
No,
is
no,
also
no.
the first time we're speaking. No worries. No.
All right.
Yeah.
Oze.
So
Okay. Oze.
yeah, and appreciate this again, Noel, the opportunity to be heard. And before we get into a deep dive of the F-14 and any other model discussions, I have to say that this is where Calibre as a company really shines, where you take feedback from your customers, and as you have said, it's a partnership, and we work together. So, really, really pleased with that, and I'm sure that we'll see great progress going forwards and build off what you have done already. So, and I know, Noel, speaking not perhaps for the full community, but you have certainly gone through a journey in the last couple of years. As you said, you gave some of your background, which was quite interesting, how your company started. But we knew, of course, how the things went since you started with the F-14 and then the other toolings. And I would say you have come a long way since those first days. I saw another video where you were discussing a visit to a Witty factory, and I
Yes.
guess that's where you had this F-16 1 to 44 as your first model.
Yes.
So it's been really a journey, and I know that it's not an easy journey, and you have definitely faced a lot of difficulties, and we are here again to give you, I think, again, speaking for myself, and there are a few other people, maybe they're writing in the chat, but
Yes.
definitely appreciate that you have constantly improved and that you engage with us. I don't think any other manufacturer engages with their fellow collectors or with their customers. So thank you again. And
Right.
whenever you're ready, let's start discussing on the tooling then.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
You have some questions for me. You can go ahead.
Yeah. So Noel, one of the main questions I have is you said that this was for the B and D, where you would get rid of the big glove vanes, of course, but the other features that you had, are they all applicable across the line? So would the F-14A also get those features, the movable flaps and slats and the airbags, etc.? So
Yes, that is
yeah, so
correct. We're undergoing an entire overhaul on
yeah.
the tooling that only is applicable to the wings and the front landing gear door,
Mhm.
and of course the final fuselage for the B and D without the glove vane. And
Right.
also it's a tooling that actually curves over, so it's
Hmm.
not two halves put together. The
Yeah.
half will be below that you can't see, so it's
Yeah.
on the side view you actually see a smooth surface.
No, that's true. That's true. And one general question before a more general comment on the F-14 and other toolings as well on the panel lines, some things which I brought up in chat yesterday.
Right.
And yeah, so on these set of changes, very curious to know, and this is only my personal taste. It's a matter of taste. Some people, they are not very concerned about the material, they are more concerned about accuracy, etc. So it's I will preface this by saying it's 100% subjective. There is no right and wrong way to do this, and I know there are limitations on what we want to achieve, so not every component can be made of metal. So but these flaps and slats, would they be metal or would they be plastic? That's the question mainly.
All right, so the main wing will be metal, of course.
Right, right,
The slats at the and the flap would be plastic.
right.
This is also because in order to have the tolerance,
Mm-hmm.
the because you're actually trying to mate two parts together. So if it's metal and metal,
Mm-hmm.
the tolerance for where it meets, it's hard to control. Whereas if I were to do it plastic to metal, then I can have a tighter tolerance in terms of the plastic piece mating with the metal piece. So that is the current consideration. I am, of course, looking to see if I can do it all metal, but initial findings is not the case. But I will still look into it. I'm not saying no for sure, but at the end of the day, it could be plastic. Whether it's metal is highly unlikely, but we'll look into it. You know what I'm saying? Because I would also like to have it to be, again. I think if we had the whole wing in plastic, then it's not acceptable, right? The fact that I'm going to have the main wing in metal, and those exchanging parts to be in plastic, I think it's a good, it's okay to it's a good compromise. I think that's the way I'm looking at it. It's a compromise, because if we actually insist on certain things, then we might run into just unforeseen situations because of the fact that the engineer advised against. Let me give you one example. I was adamant that I want the S2 tracker to be everything metal, right? So in the end of the day, I had to revise the tooling to have a certain part of the back section to be plastic, which is hollowed out the metal and then a plastic covering, because the entire metal backside of the S2 would make it too heavy, and it's actually sitting on his backside. So yeah, so as I you can see, I push towards metal because the fitter itself, you can see there's hardly any plastic. Mm-hmm. So as we push for that, we have to also be realistic and understand where are the boundaries in terms of manufacturing. Let me give you another example. One of our good friends, Christian Netwick, I hope I pronounced your last name correct, Christian. He actually made a suggestion, right? He said that, since we are doing the washer and the removable elevator for the F-16, why don't we consider that for the F-14, right? So I explained to him that, yes, although that's a good consideration, but because the elevator of the F-14 is much bigger than F-16, much bigger, meaning it's heavier, but we all want the pack to be the same size because we can't suddenly have enlarged pack, right? So if it's the same size, then when we put it into the washer now with the same configurations, then it's unable to hold the weight. So these are the things that we have to consider, that I guess most collectors are, I don't know, maybe they know, maybe they don't know, which is why I'm here. I do these streams to educate you guys. I'm doing this so that we learn together. I'm sharing what I'm learning. I'm sharing what I know, and what I don't know, I'll have to find out.
Of course, no. So I think that's the crux of the matter, that it's an engineering exercise what we do in these die-cast models, and there are limitations, and there are also constraints on budget. For example, we can't have for example, all steel models. As much as I would like a brass or a steel model, I mean, that's probably going to cost $50,000 even in this scale. But looking at examples of such movable control surfaces, if, for example, we consider the GMP 1 to 35 scale models, now they were, I think, some of the best made models in diecast because they have a lot of opening parts. But GMP were a company who were already doing very detailed car models in 1 to 18 scale. So they did something similar. And if we look at their control surfaces, and they have in fact opening ports for the gun ammunition trays, for example, you can see that in the wing of their P51 and P40. So they really did a lot of detail in there and in metal, and with sufficient tolerances so that the parts, I have not heard of them breaking off. Now, in contrast, we know that Gemini Aces 1 to 72 smaller birds, the Spitfires and the BF-109s, and again the P-51 Mustang in 1 to 72, they had metal control surfaces, and they succeeded to an extent. First of all, they feel fantastic. And the problem is, I think they break. So that is one thing, of course, which might mean that you could consider plastic as a better material if it has a better fit on the wings, on the rest of the wing. But Dragon, for example, also did movable surfaces, elevators, and ailerons. And they, I don't think they broke, but they were in plastic. So there is pros and cons, of course. And if plastic is the way, then so be it. As long as I think the main thing with plastic to be careful about is the color match with the rest of the metal body. Where with a certain, let's say, British manufacturer, we often see really poor color matching between metal and plastic of their 1 to 72 large heavies, for example. So that's just the main thing I think I would be careful with. And of course, in an ideal world, if it's again achievable from an engineering standpoint, that the fit is tight enough, the tolerances are good, so the parts don't sag, and very importantly, they do not break during shipping, then metal would be, for me, again, a personal taste, the best solution. So that's just some further feedback on this note. So thanks for some of the more background. And yeah, good luck with these change set of changes. And I think I was looking through the forum, some of the other questions which people had, and I have as well, is how they would be implemented. I mean, would it be just something we would be able to slide off, like slide the slats forward or slides the flaps?
No, it's interchangeable. So you have the default position,
Mm-hmm.
and then that part is attached by magnets, and you take it out and you put on the other option part that has the slats that
Right.
is forward.
Okay.
But for the flaps, I'm actually trying to have one piece.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still investigating. They are suggesting two piece, but I say there's no need because I'm thinking that if we have the magnets positioned in a certain way and have two sets of position of where the flap has contact points, then we can have the stowed position magnetized to the wing, and once we move the flap down, it reveals another set of contacts, and that will actually magnetize onto the wing. So that is my initial plan, but of course we need to confirm that with the engineers.
Sounds interesting, and I don't
Yeah.
think it has been done like this before, at least in my experience. And I think the only consideration I would have for such a solution is minimal or zero panel gaps between the fitting parts. But I'm sure you have thought of that. That's an obvious one.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then the airbags will be removable pieces again by magnets. So you have the fully inflated bags. You can take them out and you can put them back in, replace with the ones that allows the wing to sweep in. And then this time around, we'll have the wing swept in all the way to the parking angle.
All right.
Can you
So
hear? Yeah.
yeah, just a couple more. I was going through the list again, and the first point you mentioned, and we touched upon this very briefly, the glove veins would now be seamless. So
Yes.
if it's okay, I would like to start discussing the tooling as a whole, which we have been discussing in chat earlier. And so I'm curious because the tooling, of course, is literally set in stone. It's not just an expression here, but it is something which is very difficult to change, the main tooling. So how will you achieve that, having the seamless part of that
Yeah.
shoulder part
The
of
the
yeah.
the non-glove vein fuselage is a new tooling.
Right.
We're investing in a new tooling.
Okay.
Yes,
Then
the wings are all new toolings.
yes,
We're not changing anything. We can't go back to the old tooling and start changing things. No, that's not the way. We're
right.
actually putting new money
Okay.
into this.
All right, then. No, then maybe
Yeah.
you already know where I'm going to go next. One of the things we have discussed is not possible with the existing tooling, but then with this new tooling, I have crossed my fingers while asking this question. I hope there is a possibility of changing the wing angles, the anhedral angle.
Okay, this is something that okay. The reason why our F-14 has an angle that is not as accurate, it was because when I was doing the 3D model back in the day, they were only presenting it to me with the wings swept out. So we already have the wings swept out angle pretty much okay. But when they actually sweep the wings back, you're oh, Onza is she coming back? Let me just explain. So the wing angle, I think that the issue is that the wing angle when it sweeps back is a little bit high, right? That's because we didn't. Oh, she's back. Hi,
Yeah,
you're
so I don't
back.
know what happened. I was here. Yes,
Okay,
I'm
no
here.
worries,
Yes,
no
yes,
worries, no
yes.
worries.
Yeah.
So okay, are you saying that the current F-14 that we have, the wing angle is wrong when it's sweep back, right? Is that? Can you clarify?
Yeah, so it's not something very obvious unless you look at it from the right angle, which is
Right.
looking toward down the nose or looking from the tail. But then it
Yes.
becomes rather obvious. And for a Tomcat geek such as myself, let's say it's perhaps the only major change I would hope for
Right.
in your tooling, even beyond anything else. I mean, other features are nice to have,
Yes.
and we look for
So the fact
constant
that now
improvement.
we can actually have
Yeah.
uh what you might call it, a new tooling,
Hmm.
then I will look to revise that because, like I said before, in the previous first attempt,
Yeah.
I was only being shown the 3D model with the wings always open. So when I actually told them, could you now show me what's happening? Because uh, I saw the final product and the wings are a little bit, how should I say it, tilted up
Yeah.
when it's swept. So I went back to the 3D and said, could you show me? So when they actually did the animation
Hmm.
to sweep the wing back, then it was at that angle. So there was nothing I could do about it.
Yeah.
So it was just an oversight based on my initial. That's all I can say.
So no,
Yeah.
some in general feedback on this, that of course this was your first tooling, and again I think it's a very positive story where with your first tooling you got so many things right. So not to say anything like this is it's the best model for me personally in many ways that is available right now. And one of the things which I don't want to go into detail now, but I touched upon earlier, and that is the panel lines. So
Right.
this is again subjective, and if anybody from the forums is listening in, then they know my opinion on this very well. Where on some of the other F-14 manufacturers, I really am not a huge fan of the deep panel lines, which I personally call panel trenches. Because when we look at aircraft in person, if you go to an air show, if or an airfield, or you just look at photos, the panel lines are very subtle, and they are almost not visible unless you look closely. I think they only show up when it's really washed. And in your tooling on the F-14, they are there, but they are subtle. So that is something which I really, for me, is one of the best points of your F-14, and I really appreciate that. So once you bring out these features, I think you will just step ahead of the rest even more. So yeah, there's some other points. So some a lot of pros, but some cons for me. Again, it's the wing angle, and at certain angles, it is again. If you compare from the front and the back, then looking at photos of the real F-14, it's very clearly sloping downwards. There is a very clear anhedral, and for again, a geek such as myself, that is a defining characteristic of the F-14, how the wings sweep back and sweep down. So yeah, I just again cross my fingers that with these further improvements, we also get the right wing angle. So thanks for
Okay.
that.
Sure.
Yep, yep,
Yeah. Thanks for all these inputs because, like I said, I never claimed to be any aircraft expert. I'm just a model maker. So,
yeah.
I mean, I think nobody will believe me if I say I'm the expert in F-14 or the F-16 or whatever, right?
Oh,
There's
I'm
no
not
way.
an
I'm just
expert.
I'm just
No, no, no.
I'm just a
Yeah,
skill modeler, right? Who
yeah, yeah, yeah,
takes an
yeah.
interest in all these aircraft. So I'm sure the experts who have worked on these aircraft knows better.
Mhm.
And obviously, whenever they input, I'm always all ears to listen. But like I said, it's better to be like this now, where you're actually telling me beforehand, rather than after the model is done and then that we start saying, oh, this should be like that and like this. So then it's set in stone and I can't do anything.
Noel, this is the
Yeah.
perfect opportunity then this live stream. But I would suggest if you are doing a new major set of changes and a new tooling, maybe just have a lot of feedback. I know you already do that via Facebook, but ask for what people think is important. So maybe other people will have other requirements. I think most people are satisfied with what is present, and this angle I have seen come up a few times, for example, in the forums, again, in some of the forums, and I don't see a lot of like deal breakers being discussed. Like, people are generally happy. We have seen some issues from the outset, which you definitely have been resolving, and you continue to work on improving, of course, which is what we are talking about today. So my suggestion would be, please do gather feedback and see what the collectors see as important. I'm just one collector. I don't speak for the community. Nobody, I'm not nominated by any forum or any group to speak on their behalf. But some of the facts that I'm stating, or opinions, they are some consensus, and some is my personal opinion. But again, this wing angle, definitely I have seen come up on the forums on several of their 14 discussions. The people are saying it's a good model, we want it, but yeah, does it look right? No, it doesn't. And so that's the only main feedback I would have to give on the Tomcat. And really fantastic that you are considering a new tooling then. So let's get it as right as possible this time on this version 2, let's say.
Well,
Yeah.
we can only improve it as best as we can, but I don't think I would dare say that it is, as the definitive one.
No. Again, I said earlier, the ideal model does not exist. If it did, it would. I wish I was like really a multimillionaire, and then I would have an artist make the ideal model for me. So models from you or other manufacturers are the next best thing, and definitely I think they come close. And yes, another thing, the paint is fantastic. I think generally across the industry we see really good paint from other manufacturers as well, but Calibre paint is definitely sharper on the graphics and tempo. So please keep that up and maintain that really high standard that you have so far on the graphics, the stencils as set on the models as tempo prints. And I know we are not discussing, perhaps that's not the topic for today, the different kind of washes and panel washes and weathering techniques. That's a whole different.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I will probably do a different video on that. So
exactly. So overall, very pleased, but definitely the angle was a slight sticking point, which once improved will make these models, I think, unbeatable. At the moment, there are other manufacturers again, and they have pros and cons. Again, the ideal model does not exist, and I think we're all trying to get to a better position, but no other manufacturer again is engaging with the community. So you definitely have the process to continue improving.
Well, it comes with it's always a double-edged sword, right? Pros and cons.
Yeah,
so as I engage, sometimes it's overwhelming in terms of the amount of people that is approaching me. So I have to apologize to those who may seem that my response is slow or non-existent. I always take whatever that you send. I'll read it. Actually, it's actually good to, well, it's, as I was saying, so this entire messenger thing, Facebook, it brings us closer, maybe a bit too close sometimes. And, when something is written on Messenger, the feeling I get is that I need to respond to it as soon as possible, and it's just not possible, right? So, but back in the day when you have email, then I think it's a much more comfortable way of communicating, because I do appreciate those people who actually email me instead of messaging, because when they email, they allow me the time to digest, and the email format allows me to actually reply, and then have my replies interspersed within what they wrote, so that it's very clear that I address every single point. I'm sure those of you who have interacted with me on email would testify to this, that I like to grab what you have written, and I will actually reply to almost every sentence that you have brought up. So I think for me, for those who are listening, and of course I would urge, if there's anything that involves an in-depth discussion, email is the way to go versus messaging, because on the messaging, unless it's very quick questions, in-depth questions, it's just very overwhelming for us to handle, an answer, if you know what I'm saying. Do you agree? Oza?
Yes, I'm here. I'm just unmuting myself. So yes, completely understood. And it is a double-edged sword. And I do I do wonder. I mean, Noel, that you are pretty much running a lot of the things, the whole business. So it's really both brave of you and must require a lot of energy to engage with the community through. I mean, I personally am guilty of never sending an email and only just opening up chats. But having said that, I have a realistic expectation. I know that I have no expectation that you must respond immediately. I know you should have a life and you are running a business. So this is also rather uncommon, I would say, in an industry where the company owner is so proactively engaging with the community and being so responsive. So that is definitely appreciated, and it's again something that you need to take care of as well, that you don't get too involved, Noel. That's just my suggestion. Don't think things too personally. There might be people with, a lot of us, we try to give objective feedback, and critique is to be constructive, of course. But sometimes we can get mired into discussions, and there's this expression of Chinese whispers can start, and somebody said that, or he said that. No, actually, he said that, and personally, I would not want to get involved in those things. Just too consuming time wise and emotionally.
Right. So I think
Yeah.
you actually brought up the topic that I was going to talk about. How's your time? Are you rushing off somewhere else? I know you have
No,
your kids to take care of.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. By the way, I apologize. Are they audible in the background? I sent them to another room, but
Oh, no, they are perfectly fine. I didn't hear them at all. No,
okay,
no.
cool.
Yeah.
So no, I'm perfectly fine for time. No worries. So of course, it's up to you with the agenda and the timing. And
Right.
I think I've said most of the things I wanted to say on the. And in fact, you have given some more information that this is a new tooling altogether.
Oh,
So
yes, yes.
I'm celebrating over here because I think I'm going to fire off an email to you, Noel, after this one.
Okay.
No, I'm just joking, based on what you said. But
Right.
definitely, I would say let's continue this dialogue between the community and you to make sure that this tooling. And again, of course, you have to be careful that you cannot fulfill everybody's wishes. And I say that for myself as well. If I make any fancy wishes, then you cannot please everybody unless you release a model which costs 10 times as much as it does now. So I know it's a balancing act, and I wish you all the best with that.
Yes, it's interesting that you mentioned that because, you know, when you mentioned about not being too involved, I think I can't avoid it because as and when there's anything that pops up where it's untrue, so I got to
Mhm.
step in. Otherwise, when something is untrue, and then nowadays you read it on online, as you know, right? Nowadays, well, that the media, social media, is very rampant, and
Yeah.
people normally read without fully understanding or even knowing what might be facts or untruths. So the reason why I actually had to step in versus just turning a blind eye is because I am getting questions from the community, regarding certain things. That is, if I were to keep a blind eye, then all these questions come in. Then I'll be wasting not wasting, but I'll be spending my energy to address these issues, which are actually non-issues in the first place. So do you see where I'm coming from? So I do my best whenever there's something that crops up that's brought to my attention. I would use my platform to make sure that I clear the air, so to speak. And I do this without, I guess, prejudice or without any other agenda, rather than but only to clear the air so that everybody knows what's really going on, and that's my only aim. So if I actually don't do this, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night knowing that something is brewing in the background and it might get blown up to out of proportions. So that's where I'm coming from. And yeah, go ahead.
All right, then. Thanks, Noel. I think that's to be expected, and it's very understandable because the company and everything that it does and it produces is essentially, if you don't mind my saying, it is your baby. So of course you are careful about what is being said about it, and I imagine a lot of people, I myself, might be, as you say, but at a certain point it gets too difficult. I mean, I would say it starts to get too time consuming, but that's again myself. And when the day comes that you are I mentioned this only half jokingly yesterday or the day before yesterday, where I said that if you become a really large company, then just hire a spokesperson, a spokesman or a spokesgirl, or spokeswoman, sorry, a spokesman or spokeswoman, to speak on your behalf, and then you can just focus on the manufacturing and distribution, etc. So it's a separate thing altogether, and on that I wish you good luck, even more so than on the tooling perhaps. But I don't have a lot, of course, to say around the community and so on. That's a separate thing. My feedback and questions were to do with the F-14 and the tooling. And in general, Noel, if you want to move to this community questions and the community engagement, then of course, please do so. I will just say, in perhaps the last thing from my side, that I think a differentiation amongst all the companies in the products is, what are the main factors? I think it's the detail that collectors look at. Some collectors, such as myself, so I will definitely not say that everybody wants that, that it's a must-have for everybody. But for me and some others, having a high metal content is extremely important, because these are die-cast models, they're not plastic cast. But that's, again, something which increases the value for me. And then thirdly is the panel lines, which some of the earlier Witty models were fantastic at, and the Calibre wings models continue that at an even better level with the rivets that you have implemented again on the F-14. I won't speak to the other models because, in full disclosure, I don't have any of your other models yet. I'm a big Tomcat fanatic, so I cannot speak to the accuracy or the details, etc., of the other product lines. So that's just my last two points:
Okay.
details and metal content, and the panel lines and the shape accuracy. I think is very important at the end of the day. If we can have all the detail in the world, but in a civil airliner models, for example, there are small issues, but big issues come up when the wing angles are not correct, or when there are major discrepancies on what we call the cheat line being too high or too low, And as you mentioned, you've done some of that with your very first model being an Airbus A380. So I think the major things, the basics, are the overall shape and angles, and the rest follows after that. Some of detail, we're never going to have a 100% detailed model. So I know, Noel, I believe you had a background as a modeler, and you built high detailed plastic kit models. And in diecast, we know that that's never going to happen. And maybe a new technology is invented 20 years from now where we can have such ready-made metal models, maybe with some fancy new, I'm not necessarily going to say 3D printing, but something in the future. But for the moment, diecast is what we have, and it's definitely improving with your products. So thank you for listening, and
Yeah.
I will let you continue with the other questions I think people are asking on the chat, and the other community
Right.
thing. So thanks, and I'm going to mute myself, Noel.
There's no need to mute yourself. You can leave it on, but you're going to be available to
I'm
carry
here.
on the show, right?
I'm here in the stream.
Yeah. Then
Yes.
we can do this together. So let's just maybe just
Yes.
go ahead to
Sure.
move on to what I wanted to show, which is the tooling of the fitter and the Fiasco. So I'm going to share. Just a minute. That would be. Hold on. Oh, I've not opened the file yet. So sorry. Let me open the file. By the way, which country are you at? I
I'm
don't know.
based in yes, I'm based in Denmark.
Oh, Denmark.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Okay. And you are, maybe tell me a bit more about yourself.
Well, I'm an engineer by profession, and
Okay.
I am primarily a software engineer.
Okay.
So that's me, and I've got young kids. So I don't know if they're audible in the background again, but
Oh, no
yeah.
worries. No worries. Absolutely
So,
no
and
worries.
yeah,
Yeah.
and both of them, a boy and a girl, they do like the models. So it's also part of the challenge is you can look but not touch these expensive die-cast models.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm pulling out the file. Just give me a second. Oh, so wow, Denmark is a pretty interesting place. Okay. So I'm going to. All right. Let me get back to the window here. Yeah, I'm still not the best expert at manipulating the. Okay, so. All right, so first of all, I'm going to talk about the fitter, and if you can see over here, you can see that basically that's all the fitter in terms of the die cast. So basically everything, as you can see, on the fitter is die cast. There's barely any plastic, from the wings to the fuselage to the elevators to the vertical stabilizer. Everything is all metal. All right. But the problem with this is that it's still not what you might call it. The tooling is still not done to my what's the word I'm looking for to my satisfaction. Okay, so I'm going to share for the first time with everybody who's on the stream, exactly what's going on with how I actually analyze and call for improvements. So this is so I can actually just narrate. The clear parts are very badly done. The scratches on the clear plastic, that means the mold in this case is not polished. All right, so this is something that you guys can also learn, whether a canopy is clear, crystal clear, or whether it's cloudy. Depends on whether the tooling is polished to the degree. All right, so if we were to produce the fitter at this present point of time, then you will see that the canopy actually sinks in as it closes. All right, so that has to be adjusted. See, I even make it very clear that the canopy has to be not past where I've marked it as red, so that it's in line. And then even when we talk about it being gap free, so currently the canopy has a gap on both the left and the right side. So if we go to production, these are all the flaws that is purely visible. Okay. It's even the smallest aspect of the tab. If the tab is a little bit just too protruded, it does not allow the canopy to open, right? If the tab is too long, if the canopy. Okay, so what happens is if the tab is too long, once you actually close it, you can't actually open it. That's the problem. If you have any comments, you can just chime in as I go along. All right. So again, there is gaps on the windscreen, transparent part as clearly seen. To address those, there is also a raised section which needs to be adjusted so that it's flush to the aft of the fuselage of the canopy, the cockpit canopy. So things like this, right, where it is clear that there is some material residue from the tooling that is obstructing the rivets. So I'm actually going into such microscopic examination. So hopefully that by this simple review, collectors can appreciate what goes on behind the scenes. All right. So even all these flesh is called to be eliminated, as you can see on the plastic parts. And even this, right? These are obviously not what we want. And when the two halves of the fuel tanks are meshed together, currently there's a gap on this. That's because the packs inside, one of them is either too shallow or too long, or the hole is too shallow. And even with this, right, the tool, there are sections of the profile on the pitot that's missing from the tooling. This little vents, I think these little vents, the one I circled in yellow, it's obviously wrong because it's supposed to be a vent that closes in and not this protruding profile. Obviously, you have all these gaps, right? So gaps are not acceptable. The tooling must be adjusted. Again, another gap that is readily seen now, at the afterburner section. This gap would be the front fuselage adjoining to the main section of the fuselage. This gap would be the ventral fin that is underneath the fitter. These are clearly gaps and even missing material because it's supposed to form flush with the vertical stabilizer, but as you can see on the picture there, it's having a radius, so it's actually missing material. So again, another gap now that is mating with the curved section of the wing. And these are missing panel lines, as you can see very clearly. So these are actually, if we go into production, as you mentioned earlier about the F-14, maybe some of the panel lines are not visible. That's because, on the tooling itself, it's either worn out or the paint could be too thick. But in this case, it's not the paint too thick. In this case, it's actually the tooling that's having the problem. And also, we look at the left and right of these handles. They are not properly formed. Material is missing. These section on the vertical stabilizer is deformed. These chaff and flare dispensers are having very crude moldings, so this needs to be adjusted. You can see very clearly. And of course, there's a gap that is currently too visible in the afterburner section that we need to flush out. We have a little hole that allows you to remove the magnetic undercarriage door in closed position. However, there is no such little hole that helps you with the removal of the main landing gear, so that needs to be inputted. But on the other side, there seems to be some imperfection in terms of the tooling, as you can see between the left and the right. So this side is okay, as I've written in green, and the part that's not tooled properly is written in yellow. So things like this is extremely loose, needs to be addressed. And all these attachment points is currently still very loose. So they have to fine-tune the tooling, otherwise it's not applicable. So we can go on and on, right? We can go on and on. So these are a lot of issues with the fitter now that I'm currently trying to get them to perform. But unfortunately, they are not being as receptive as I hope them to be. So therefore, the fitter is currently in a situation whereby I said, once the tooling is done, we will definitely release it. But once the tooling is not done, I can't really have a clear timeline for the release of the first wave. So yeah, that would be the fitters update.
All right, Noel, thanks for that update.
Yeah.
I wouldn't comment in any detail on that because I have know next to nothing about that particular airframe.
Okay.
But it's an interesting insight into the development process and the feedback that you have to give. And I assume that you actually had a prototype model in hand on the basis of which you gave these feedback to the factory.
The test shot.
Yeah, the test shot, exactly.
Yes.
Right. So thanks for that. And while I was also looking at some of the one or two other points I forgot to actually ask about. The paint, as you mentioned on the paint on the fitter, I just remembered the paint thickness point. So earlier I was saying that the paint is one of the differentiating factors where Calibre paint is. It's not like a huge difference between the others. All manufacturers, I think, they are doing a good job. Certainly matching the expectations that we have for any manufacturer, and some of them, if you don't mind my saying, then they do a really good job on the panel washes. A particular company that took over from Witty, their weathering and panel washes are really spectacular on some of the recent releases. So for Calibre, the main differentiation is the sharpness of the parts, as you were just showing as well now, the panel lines and the rivets. So to show those, the paint cannot be too thick. And I have noticed that while the paint was really good and it was not thick in the earlier F-14 releases, in the Persian Cat, it seems to be a little thick. So I hope that's just something that to keep in mind as well for the future releases, because otherwise we lose the detail and the sharpness of what you have on the tooling itself.
Yeah,
So
definitely. Yeah.
yeah. And that's something which I saw as the consensus among all the collectors from the outset, that the detail level again of your toolings of the F-14 tooling, at least speaking on that, is really good. So paint thickness, again, we need to be really careful about that, and just please make sure that the factory again, not touching upon, I don't think it's a QC question, it's not a question of quality control, it's across the product line. So I was looking into the models that I have and also comparing, because the question always arises, is it my copy, is it the unit that I received, or is it across the board? And across the board, I think until the just before the Persian Cat, I see all the models have really sharp paint, and the rivets show up very precisely, as do the panel lines. On the Persian Cat, that one that I received, especially on the rear of the model, it seemed to be a bit rough. And then I looked at photos from other collectors, and it was the same story over there.
Mm.
So again, that's just how the factory, of course, does things. So some more feedback on that.
No, it's very simple. See,
Yeah.
when you not when you don't pay attention, well, me, onto certain things,
Mhm.
then obviously, how do I put this? In the initial onset, we make sure we stress that the paint has got to be thin,
Right.
and it was obviously visible in our earlier waves, right?
Mhm.
So along the way, when you stop saying that the paint needs to be thin, then people forget, and I wouldn't have to think that I have to keep saying that the paint needs to be thin,
Yeah.
right? So it only needs to be discovered. Then we have to say, okay, you have to go back to make the paint not so thick.
Yeah.
But we did increase a little bit on thickness, is because in our initial wave,
Mhm.
the paint was too thin. It was too thin, such that when we had feedback from collectors that it was, if you rub it with your, I mean, they were putting the stands on, and they were
Yeah.
saying that it actually had some, it was easily removed. It was easily, you can basically use a very fine sandpaper and sand it, and then you can see the metal already. So that was too thin back then. Then we actually
Mhm.
increased it a little bit. But I guess
Yeah.
during the increment, then you know just by human nature, people forget about the tolerance and got it a little bit too thick. So yes, I will look into that. I've already stressed that we have to ensure that the paint are not applied too thick. That is
Mhm.
always my go-to thing. It has to be thin enough, not thick. Otherwise, then there's no point to have all the rivets and details when you're
Yeah.
actually covering everything over. So
And
yeah, that is
that's where you
yeah.
spend a lot of, I guess, the effort in creating the tooling, the original, the master, and then the tooling on the basis of that. And interestingly, I was looking at some of your pre-production shots of the upcoming Top Gun, the desert and the Splinter, the blue Splinter.
Yes.
And at least from the yeah, there is no shots of the desert, but the Splinter one, I think that again the paint is better. The rivets and lines do show up. Now it's difficult to judge just from these photos, but it
Mm,
looks like, so it's like a one-off. So it's not like a continuous downward trend. So it's maybe only on the Persian Cat. So, but you make an interesting point earlier that you did stress upon them that the paint thickness has to be correct, but then you thought it
yeah.
was a practice embedded in the factory, but it turns
Correct.
out that it's not always the case. So you just, I guess, need to keep, for each order, perhaps for each wave, just say that these are the main requirements, even if they're things that have been asked for a dozen times before. Again, the paint has to be correct, and so on and so forth. The fitting has to be correct, and do the right level of quality checks, please. So yeah. That's I
Right.
think that's stating the obvious. But in all our professional businesses or careers, stating the obvious is where people make mistakes if that is not stated,
Yeah.
and that's why we
Yeah.
have managers. That's why I have a boss, and the boss has a boss, and so on. Just to state the
Yeah,
obvious.
but unfortunately, for us, there is no boss and a boss and a boss
Yeah, yeah,
because let's be realistic. We can't, as you mentioned, you had given us some good wishes to grow big,
yeah. Mhm.
but at the end of the day, Caliber Wings cannot grow big because the moment uh, it grows big, then the taste will be different. It's just like uh, a chef who has a good taste. He opens a stall and he
Mhm.
gets a lot of customers and he cooks a good dish. And once he opens up a bigger restaurant and he hires other chefs, then the food taste quality goes down. That is just part and parcel of life. If you agree with me.
Yeah, no. So I understand that it's not something I would give an immediate answer on. I'm thinking about it in that the main question is what is the demand level, and we can accept that it's never going to be like a huge business diecast
Exactly. Yeah.
collections and
Exactly.
these models they are quite niche,
Yeah.
and it's surprising. You mentioned the product lines that you started with, those toys and statues, and recently I was looking into that as well, and I was blown away by how popular these toys. Now, I shouldn't. They are toys in some ways. What we collect is
Yes.
also toys for big
Well,
people.
collectibles. They're collectibles.
They're collectibles, yes, and some of these
Yes.
statues they run to thousands of dollars,
Yes. Yes.
and there are companies of pretty decent size behind them, and there is definitely demand. But these are all like niche products in niche areas. So, but given having said that, I definitely think that there will be some further expansion possible. But again, I'm not in I don't know the economics of the diecast industry. I know that there is a lot of people and a lot of collectors, and it depends, I guess, on the demographics as well. How many want to do model collecting versus social media or playing games. So
Right.
that's the
Right.
thing. But I think the demand is there, and it can still grow. I think that
Right.
on the basis of the fact that your models do sell out pretty quickly on all the retailers here, at least in Europe. If we
Mhm.
don't buy in the first couple of weeks when a model is released, then it's gone, and it's a pretty healthy market I see on the secondary market as well. So they're not sold out long enough to judge whether they are really in demand or not, the used models, but the demand is there to have them sold out quickly enough. So yeah, but
Right.
yeah. So I know you are taking questions and answers. So I guess there are
Yeah.
questions you
Let's
have. Want
go ahead
yeah.
to look at some questions. All right.
Mhm.
So Jorge has asked. I mentioned that the removable engines on F-14 was not possible. Have you considered again to do so? All right. So it is not possible on the current tooling. It is not possible. But I am not actually going to look into making that at the moment because let's put it this way: if you do everything at one shot, it's going to take more time to do it, and it's just not something that is logical and practical. Right? You have got to do it step by step. So we did the F-14 first. We now are going to making the flaps version, and then along the way, who knows, right? If there's enough of the demand, then we can put in the engine version, uh, and you know just improving it and improving it. So that's the way I look at things. If I were to go all out to just do everything at one go, then it is not something that I am looking at. Plus the fact that we already have concerns about cost. So the more things you add into the model, the more cost is going to be added on. And we are currently just not sure that the market can accept, because as much as I see the market in my own perspective, right? I want to actually inculcate collectors to see what model collecting can be, which is more than just a static piece that you put onto your desk in flight mode. That it is more than that. It is, having, yeah, like having engine, having radar, and having an accurate seat, and having all as accurate as possible. So that's what I'm actually aiming for. So when we actually do things like that, it comes with certain compromises. So we have to weigh the compromise such that why does the fitter not have any other special features? Because, you know, I figured that I've already given the fitter the most metal content of all my models. So every single model that I do has actually, I guess, its own story. So the F-14 would be the story that it is the very first Calibre's tooling. The Su-24 would be the case of the best panel lining attempt, even better than F-14. The F-16 is the attempt at all the internal components done onto the model itself, and then the fitter, away with plastics, making it all metal as much as possible. So that's how we're going. Every single model has a story in that sense. So I hope that I've answered that question. Any thoughts from you, Hansa?
Yes, definitely. Thanks for the opportunity, then, Noel. So, uh, my thoughts are that it's ambitious for sure to have removable engines, but I would question, first of all, the economics of that, looking at the pricing of the F-16, which is by comparison a much smaller aircraft and model.
Mm,
And with just one engine and that premium feature, the price is
yeah,
rather high.
yeah.
So I would imagine that if we did, if you attempted that on this much larger F-14, and with that to two models, the price would be astronomical. And more so, the apologies. Let me just get the kids out of the room.
Okay, no worries. I don't actually hear them actually.
And maybe the noise suppression is good. I've got a
Yeah,
2-year-old and he's laughing, so that, at least
yeah.
he's not crying.
Kids are great. Kids
Yeah, yeah,
are
yeah. So the tooling. No, where was I? Yes, the engine. So I would also wonder the benefit of having actually being able to remove the engine. If anything, I would say sell an optional engine, a separate accessory of a engine which we could pose next to the aircraft model. So we don't
mm,
modify the existing Tomcats that we have, but we pose maybe on a nice trolley, an engine placed on a nice trolley as it would
right.
be on the deck of the aircraft carriers. And if people, I mean, if we also look at again going back to the simple economics, if every model came with a removable engine and the cost doubled because of that, I
Yeah,
wouldn't display all of them with the engine removed. I want to show
exactly.
the aircraft as it is, ready to take off, or in the air. So
Exactly.
maybe
Yes.
only 5% would be displayed like that. So I think the takeaway for me is, in the future, perhaps you can think of accessories such as separate engines with paraphernalia or equipment around that. So the vehicles and the trolleys for those engines, and trolleys for the weapons as well. So we get a lot of weapons options, ordnance options on your tool, on all the models basically.
Mm,
But it's not always sensible to display every weapon, every drop tag, etc. on the model. So I would love to see some ways to display those separately next to the aircraft. And I can imagine you might already have thought of this, because, for example, you're releasing things like the aircraft elevator, the deck hang elevator. So it's just things which we can consider as accessories. So that's my thoughts on this. A
right.
nice to have, but I think prohibitive from a cost point, and not really practical from displaying for every single model.
Right. I think I mentioned this another time. I'm not sure if you heard it. My rationale and vision for the F-16 basically is to do that clear see-through air intake. So by doing that, the engine came into play because there's
Right.
no point to do a see-through air intake
Yeah.
and there's no engine inside.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah.
If I just put a little round representation of the turbofan at
Mhm.
the end, and there's nothing there, then to me it defeats the purpose. And the moment you have a true engine,
Mhm.
sorry, a true air intake on the F-16, the moment you have that, then you can't change the landing gears like other companies, right? You
No.
can't have the main gear just pop in the middle, because the main gear, that cartridge, actually blocks off the air intake.
Mhm.
So that is a design consideration, you
Yeah.
know. So it's actually something that I've actually, if I mean, in a negative sense, I shot myself in the foot because by thinking of this design, I had to incorporate the engine. I had
Right.
to make the price higher.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm just
So
wondering.
yeah.
Sorry if I'm interrupting. I'm just
Oh
wondering.
no, no, no.
So I can relate because I come from a background and still have a deep love of 1 to 18 models of cars, especially
Hmm,
motorsports models. So there's companies such as CMC and in
right.
the old days I mentioned GMP. Now they built really detailed models. So CMC models, it's a German company, but of course, actually it's German Chinese, and their models can have parts up to 2,000 parts in a single model.
Yes, I
And
understand. I
if
know.
you ever see those, I mean, if you open up the engine bay, if you open up the luggage compartment and look at the underside, oh man, they're like works of art. They're like unbelievable, and a lot of metal content, but also, of course, it has to have some plastic, even leather and brass and so on. And before you came along with your F-16, I was thinking the same thing. Man, wouldn't it be awesome to have an openable engine, an openable aircraft model? But I think, first of all, the very scale we are talking about, 1 to 72, places big limitations. So I mentioned earlier GMP's 1 to 35 scale Mustangs, P-51 Mustang and P-40 Warhawk. Now
Yeah,
they are fantastic, but they went out of business. I should mention that as well, because maybe it's a difficult business model to sustain. So I would never ask or suggest let's aim for the same model details as we see in the car models, because these aircraft models, they are a whole different ball game. But if we talk about wanting to see the engine, maybe what I can suggest, and you do that on one end of the engine anyway, you have the compressor fan visible through the intakes of the F-14. And so that's something that's already better than any other manufacturer, as far as I am aware, where you don't see those, you know, as precise as possible molded engine fan visible from the front. So maybe you can do whatever is visible at the back end of the engine. So if we shine a light down there, then we can see that. But I wouldn't ask for or expect anything more than that, having a full-fledged engine inside the engine nacelles, because that's just a lot of extra cost and complexity, which adds to the value of the price of the model without being of much utility. So that's what I would suggest. Let's have the front and the back end of the engine visible, molded. And for that, I'm fine with plastic. I will not insist on metal on these things. But beyond that, if we want a full engine, let's have a posable accessory. That's
right,
my
right,
view on this engine and the details.
right,
I think, Noel, this reflects again on your background on a plastic modeler. The dream, ultimate dream, of course, is that as much detail, and they have like ridiculous levels of detail. You can have the pilot's ladder and the hatches for the pilot's ladder and the avionics compartments. They all open up on some of these high detail kits, and man, that's unbelievable. But practically not achievable by any means in diecast, and nor should it be for that matter. If you want that detail, we build the plastic model. Otherwise, if I like metal, I would definitely buy whatever you and other manufacturers put out.
right.
So my 2 cents on this.
Yeah. So I just want to close up by saying that, for the F-16 in particular,
Mhm.
it could not have been done the way the F-14 was done, because the moment you have something that deep inside,
Right.
then there's just no way.
Mm.
Uh, there's just no way to change
Right.
once you change this part here, then you're already blocking off the air intake. So it's just physically not possible. It's against Newton's law.
No, that's fine.
Yeah,
I guess the
right,
laws of
right,
physics,
right.
basically. I understand what you
Yeah,
mean, Noel. And again, I'm a big F-14 fanatic, and that's the main reason why I don't have the F-16, for example. And I'm just waiting for the right livery. So I like
sure,
the
sure,
some of the show liveries, maybe
sure.
the Thunderbirds livery or something. But I definitely would add one or two and just show the engine besides one of those. But yeah, so on that point, I think we've talked a lot on the removable
Right.
engines.
Okay.
I will stop
I have
talking
to
on
give
that.
a shout out to David Griffins, who's just joined the stream. Hi, David. Nice to see you here. All right. So next concern is that the F-16 nose angle is a little wrong. Well, I guess what you mean is that the current. This is not the full thing. So, okay. So what happened is that there is just a little bit too much material on here. So when the front landing gear is positioned, it sort of just tilts the nose up a little bit too much. So that is being improved on the second wave. So going forward, we'll have the F-16, pitched down as it should be. So that is just something, but it's not overly elevated, I would say. It is just, almost zero degrees. But yes, I understand that it should be negative a little bit. So that hopefully addresses the concern. If you have anything to add.
Just one point, not specifically
Yeah.
on this, but deriving from this point here and your reply. One thing I have learned, I have been collecting diecast models for about 8 years now. Started a lot, very heavily with model cars. Then have got too many aviation models and other model types, mostly diecast. And the one thing I have learned is the perfect model just does not exist. It cannot exist. Maybe that's a law of physics itself. So, and I'm talking about accuracy as well, not just about details. Like, of course, we cannot expect a model to be like a shrink ray version of the real deal. But even if we talk about the accuracy of the shape and the proportions, now that's my personal sticking point. I definitely want maximum accuracy on that. But when we talk about the nose angle, for example, I just recalled a lot of examples from other companies also, and both World War II subjects as well as modern jets, where the aircraft is either a tail sitter or the nose is somehow too low. So I think that's a valid critique. Of course, we always want improvement, but as a general point, I think I always try to keep in mind the perfect model cannot exist, but we just need to get the basics right. So
Yeah, exactly.
that's my feedback on this.
All right.
Yeah.
So he also mentioned to say that don't give up your quality control. Of course not. We are. I mean, if that is not a concern, right? So I will be addressing that for sure.
Can I just very quickly
Yeah.
say on this note,
Yeah.
this is an area where I don't want to wade too deep into the waters, because I saw that, and of course you're aware it started getting really contentious. But I think some of the misunderstanding was people thought that there is no quality control whatsoever, and my understanding is, of course, there is quality control,
Right.
standard quality control from the factory, but you're not. As a company owner, I don't expect you to be personally checking each and every model. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion started. So I think it's just worth saying that there is quality control, and that is standard as much as the standard in the overall diecast industry at the same level.
Right. But on the contrary, I was actually doing personal checking.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, 6 particular models that I did in 2020.
Yeah.
So because I moved to the new factory, and like I said, I cannot hold their hand every
Yeah.
time. And I've already mentioned in my last stream that I cannot, I can only check maybe 50 to 100 models a day.
Mm-hmm.
And if on a good day, that means everything is good, you can check about 200 models,
Yeah.
one person. So again, in a batch of 1,000 pieces, if everything goes smoothly, you are sitting there checking 100 to 200 models a day. So that's about 5 to 10 days. So the moment I'm there 5 to 10 days, means I'm not doing anything else. I'm doing 100% QC 5 to 10 days. And if I have all these number of models, imagine I'm sitting down there 5 to 10 days for every model, then it just doesn't make sense. First of all, it is physically demanding, and it takes up my time to do other things. But not to say that I'm shaking off responsibility, because when I check the models, then most likely it cannot pass QC. Let's just put it this way. So sometimes I rather not check the models, because if I do it, then it's not going to go out. It's just going to be held up. They're just going to keep on reworking. But again, let's not use what I just said to be viewed in a negative way, meaning that I'm actually trying to push out bad quality models. What I'm trying to say is that if I were to actually look at it, then most likely there will be lots of rejects, because my level of checking is different from the average person's level of checking. That's why I actually was making comments whenever people are receiving their models and saying that they're good. And then I say, oh, I didn't QC that at all. Do you know what I'm saying here? So I'm
Yeah.
actually trying to give some credit to the factory that they're actually producing good work. And that's
Yeah.
that's what we need to. That's what we need. We need a factory partner that's producing good work.
Yeah.
If the factory partner is not doing good work back in the day, right, like the saw mark and all these things, that's why I changed factories,
Mhm.
right? So I mean, it is. And then I can relate. I can just bring a story that the Japanese companies that do these kind of models, they actually do 100% check. That means they have a person sitting there from their company checking everything. So, but unfortunately, the person in my company is me, right? As I mentioned before, I have an assistant, Kelly. She's doing the order. She's not going to be sitting down there checking the models, right? She doesn't know models. She only knows how to handle administration and helping me with the orders and customer service. So even most of the time, when customers write in to request for certain things, she's asking me, what is that? What is? I mean, she's always asking the customer, can you please show us a picture? Because she doesn't know what is the nose. She doesn't know what is the missile. Which missile? Can you please show me pictures?
Mhm.
So I think I put myself in a position whereby since I'm in it, I have to do it. So whether it is something that is maybe regarded as more tedious, I can't shrug it off. So I'm just telling you guys, because the reason why I did that video of me QCing the Super Tomcat is to show that I'm actually doing this work as part of the process. But I am trying to teach the factory to a certain extent that I don't have to sit there and do this every time, right? As you said, if I grow bigger, and the only way to grow bigger is to delegate. Do you agree?
Of course.
If I'm doing everything myself without delegating and just holding on to everything, then you can't grow. It's just me. I'm everything. I'm your customer service. I'm your janitor. I'm your QC. I'm your designer. I'm your video podcaster. So it's hard to find good help, and I do what I can. So it's always a little bit, I would say, depressing if we get news that people are overly critical when they shouldn't be, right? So I'm just asking for, you know, uh, parity, should I say, right? Parity. I understand that, customers, I've mentioned this many times, customers are paying their hard earned dollars. And I've again mentioned, if they think that what they're getting is just not up to the par, then perhaps they should consider buying something else. Yeah.
So Noel, my I think the main. Okay, I'll start with the fact that I did see the Super Tomcat quality check video that you put out a few months
Yes.
ago. I mean, I think it
Yes.
was half a year or so ago, and
Yeah.
even then, I assumed that you were only checking a sample, a
Oh
subset
no,
of the.
I was doing 100% check.
So that's quite mind blowing to learn now. And
Yeah.
going back to what you said, that you were looking at every single model
Yes.
in those waves. First of all, as a general comment, you are a man of patience, and your eyes are very strong. My eyes and my patience would give out after 30 minutes of trying such an exercise. So well done on that. And I think I bought almost all of those. So now I know that they pass through your checks. And I think now, speaking on behalf of the collectors, perhaps, but not officially, no. But again, we are
Let's not do
grateful that you
that.
did
Why
do this. Yeah,
yeah.
you did do those checks. But now on to a more concrete idea or suggestion, perhaps, that still, let's look at a subset of models when they are sent out from the factory. So if you can still try to see that they are doing their own quality controls, and they so do some kind of maybe randomized checking. So don't say, okay, send me a model to check. You just try to find something which they have no idea you're going to check, and just maybe in a release of, let's say, 1000, see 5 or 6 at random production intervals on the production or after production. So this way, I guess this is the only real way that. And I've been reading some of the other industries, they do quality check on the same level. They don't check every single item, but they check at least a subset, and I think that's important. And that's where, if you start with the first wave, the
I'm gonna have
first,
to stop you there a little
yes,
bit
yes, go
because
ahead.
I think what you mentioned does not
Mhm.
apply to what we do.
Yeah.
What you mentioned before is applicable for bigger industries where you take a sample size
Mhm.
because there's enough what you call it. It's enough to say, okay, if this is good enough, then the whole batch should be like that, right?
Yeah.
So if you apply it here, if I look at 100 models,
Mhm.
I'm looking at 10%. So I'm thinking that the rest of the 90% should be like that.
Mhm.
But it is not the case because the sample size is not big enough. You're
Right.
only doing 1,000 units, right?
Yeah.
You're
So
only doing 1,000 units, whereby those other places you're talking about are doing tens, if not hundreds of thousands
yeah.
of commodities.
Right. So
So
it's the statistical sample size and the population size and the sample size that I think you're referring to. And again, I'm not an industry expert, so I of course accept what you're saying. But that was just my suggestion that some of them at least should be checked, and not just say that the factory is doing a wonderful job
yes,
and
I'm
then
actually at the factory almost 24/7. So I'm actually constantly
okay, okay,
overseeing everything. That's why I'm giving you guys the updates on when
right,
something's
right, right.
pet printed, when
So
something's
that's
done. I'm
right.
just I'm
You're there already.
I'm
Yeah,
giving you guys updates on what you guys are buying.
yeah,
So I hope that is appreciated, and I enjoy giving all these kind of updates. So when I'm on doing these kind of live streams and I'm sharing, that's what I do. It should
yeah.
not be perceived in another way. I'm not sure how any other way it can be perceived besides
So
me sharing. Yeah.
a very quick feedback on this, and again, I touched upon this earlier, that it's amazing that you can find the time to engage so much with the. Now, I think that's important, but the time that you spend, I think a lot of us, or myself, would rather that you be the the engineering guy and the manufacturing guy, and not talk so much to people all the time. And that's speaking on a
Yes, but if I
subjective.
don't do that, nobody will do it. If I
Oh,
if I stop communications and just
yeah,
concentrate on making the model, then
yeah.
you will hear total crickets
Yeah, yeah. So
from
it's a
Calibre
balance
Wings.
thing. Yeah, it's a balance thing. And the last thing
Right.
on this topic as a whole, when you said that you put out videos from the factory floor, I love those videos of the tempo printing in particular. Like you did on the last one. Remember, I think was the Miss Molly, and also I think
Yes.
on the blue
The
Top
top.
Gun.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So just seeing how those colors are imparted, and they are so much better and preferable to any kind of decal application. So I
Yes.
think that, as a general comment on die-cast models, that's where I think they are really miles better than plastic models, or resin
Right.
models for that matter,
I
because
agree.
the graphics are tempos, and they never peel off. And for me, it's just an aesthetic thing. When I look at a decal, I can see the transparent film around it.
Right.
I can see the different shine. I call it a decal shine. And it's decals are they have their place. I'm not saying that they're the worst thing. Of course, on plastic models, they're the only way to achieve quality graphics. But on die-cast models, the way that you, and not just say this Calibre models, but other manufacturers also, on aviation models in general, just love those tempo
Right.
printed graphics. So I'll stop now, and we can look at the photo etch
Yes.
question. Yeah.
So he talks about photo etch. This is yes and no for me to answer because yes, the photo etch does include more detail, but no, because the amount of effort that you put into a photo etch, once you put it into a cockpit 172 scale, you can't really see it. In fact, what we've done with the F-14, when you look at the cockpit, the printing is more outstanding than a photo etch would be,
Yeah.
because a photo etch, you have really got to go down with your brush and start to detail it with the colors, and that's just not possible for mass production. It's okay when you look at all these 172 scale model building videos where they are putting in photo etch, and as you will know, once a photo etch part is colored with paint, it doesn't even you don't even know it's photo etch. So
Mm.
between photo etch and actual what we're doing now, okay, let me explain it this way. The reason why there are photo etch parts is because for these companies that's doing photo etch parts to detail up your plastic kits. They are not huge companies. They are, small companies. So etching is cheaper than creating a tooling. Because if you look at, if I may bring the Tamiya F-16 into the example, I think you can see for yourself that the details on the panels are good, if not better, than what you get on a photo etch. Because with a molded panel, you can have raised buttons and switches. On a photo etch, everything is flat. You only have profiles on a plane that you see this way. Once you paint it over, a Tamiya molded control panel versus a photo etch control panel, you will go for the Tamiya, the molded. So that's where actually people need to understand, instead of just saying photo etch, right? Photo etch seems to be a very, very glamorous word. I'm using photo etch parts, but if you actually dwell into what exactly is photo etch, then you'll realize. Now, having said that, that's only for plain parts. You use photo etch more for parts that are 3D. So, for example, you have pedals with holes that is too thin for the scale that you can't replicate with an injected part. If you have something that is a barrel where you rolled it, or something that's curved, that is the details. Thin. Remember, photo etch is talking about thin, talking about things that injection molding cannot achieve. Then you go to photo etch. Then yes, that's fine. We go to photo etch. But if we're doing things like cockpit details, photo etch to me has no meaning. Anything to add, sir?
Yeah, no, not a lot. I think you've answered. Of course, it's again your decisions, and my view on this is that photo etch is as you said it. Then it's for thin parts and typically used, for example, for mesh, for things like meshes and thin flat plates, which would be which we could, even if we did in plastic, they would look rough and overscaled. So this photo etch, it, as the name indicates, it's very thin metal, and that it allows us to do fine
Right.
metal meshes and flat parts.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that's the use case. And maybe I don't think it's typical in 1 to 72 die-cast models, but I think the only use case I can think of is things like aerials and small little parts on the fuselage of the aircraft. So
Right.
of course it's a reasonable thing to want if a collector wants highly detailed cockpit. But I agree that in 1 to 72 scale, it's really, first of all, difficult to achieve. And secondly, if you did, then I think the cost would easily triple. Somebody would be sitting there for 50 hours putting all those details together at,
Yep.
at the
Yep.
same level as
Exactly.
the plastic model. So I
All
think
right.
in general, not very doable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is a simple question. What will open and close or move? The canopy will open and close. The sweep wing will open and close. The elevators will shift up and down in a controlled angle. There's actually a limiting peg that's similar to the real fitter, where you can't turn the elevator beyond a certain angle. So that is something that is a feature of our fitter. And what else will open and close? Move. Then we have magnetic components for the landing gear swapping. And we have, of course, opening and close of the nose intake cover and the engine cover. So yeah, so that's for the SU-22. All right, so let's see. I think we've covered this very extensively. Hey guys, I think I'm back. So sorry about that. The computer just crashed on me. If you guys can hear me, could you just let me know on the comments section? Just give me a shout out to let me know that you guys can hear me. I'm online. Please let me know. Okay, so I'm back again, right? I'm back. Yes.
Yeah, can hear you, see you, Noel.
Okay, great. So sorry about that. Wow, we went out for what 8 minutes, 10 minutes.
Yeah, no worries. I
Yeah,
think
the computer just went blank, and it was restarting, and it wasn't connecting to the Wi-Fi, and yeah, it was just first time it happened. So let's hope that doesn't happen again. So sorry, guys. Let's get back to we mentioned about this, and let's see. So David, yeah, he got into the stream. Says thank you for the effort. We appreciate you as well, David. So Cornelio mentions that the metal pitot tubes on both the 16 and 14 is quite special, and also on this fencer, right? So the fencer is also a a three part pitot tube where the center section is plastic, and the long section and end section are of both metal. So in case you guys don't know, so yeah,
can I just speak on this?
sure.
Because as I said, even though I do not have the fencer, but this is a very clear example for me of how you continue to do practice Kaizen and not just speak the talk, but you walk the talk also. Where
Walk the walk.
walk to walk. Yeah, sorry, but
Right.
I was a big advocate, and I literally had arguments with you, Noel, back in the day. And I was saying,
Right.
no, we must, if it's doable, then let's do it in metal. And you did do that eventually, and that's for the better. So that's not taking away from the first iterations of the fence of the SU-24. They look fantastic for those who collect them. Again, not my taste on this airframe, but uh, that also I've seen the improvements also similarly likewise on the F-14 with the metal pitos. So I think that's the journey that we have to be on, where I do not see or expect other manufacturers to listen so closely and then make those changes. But it gives me faith that by listening to me and to other collectors and incorporating the changes which are possible, again, I'm being very careful. I will never say that you must do everything that I'm asking for, because I'm not giving you $1 million blank check to achieve those.
Right.
So for me, this is why I'm so happy to participate here again today and give some feedback. But that feedback includes this really positive feedback of seeing these changes for the better over the last couple of years in your models.
Right. Well, first of all, I'd like to apologize that I mentioned we should keep this under an hour, but we're going, I think, also past 2 hours plus. But no worries. If you guys are okay to join here, I'll be happy to continue. So I'd like to just make a mention that uh, the considerations are always put in place whenever I design something.
Yeah,
All the considerations. So the reason why at first the pitot was supposed to be soft is because I don't want it to break.
yeah.
If the pitot was plastic, it's going to break.
Mm-hmm.
And because the center section of the fencer is a weird shape, so that cannot be replicated by metal.
Mm-hmm.
If it was going to be a metal piece like the zinc on all our die cast, then to make something so thin, you're just asking for trouble. Whether it does not form well, those fine things,
Mm-hmm.
or it's going to be too thick and too oversized. So the consideration was for a soft piece that holds its shape. However, again, most of it are okay. Most of it, the pitot tubes are straight. But during injection, there is different temperatures, and different temperatures affects the material being injected to form or cool unevenly. So that's why everything needs attention. It's just like cooking an egg or a dish. Too much heat, it burns. Too little heat, it's undercooked, right? So it's a skill. It's constant monitoring that I guess most of us don't know, and I wouldn't know
Yeah.
until I actually got into this thing and found out why. I asked the questions why, and I
Mm,
found out, it's like that. So what they should have done is to pick out those that is curved and only keep those that's straight.
mm.
So that was what happened back in the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Similarly with the F-14, I wanted it to be soft at first because I don't want the pedal tube to be breaking or poking your hand, because I own Sentry wings, and the pedal tube on Sentry wings is very sharp,
Hmm.
if you agree with me, right? So even the later metal pitos that we did on the F-14, they are not exactly sharp. Again, this would point to not being accurate because on the actual F-14, it's actually a very thin and small pito.
Hmm.
But if we did it as thin as that, then it's going to break as well.
Yeah.
Because I've also bought those brass pitos for F-14 or 172 scale.
Hmm.
They are so thin. It's like a piece of even though it's metal, but its strength is no better than PVC. In fact, PVC is stronger than that particular little piece of metal. If you know what I'm saying,
Yeah. 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 Makes sense.
right?
And it's all a balance game at the end of the day.
Right. So
Yeah.
that settles that.
Hmm.
Um, let's see. Is there any other questions? So Cornelio mentions that they'll pay 10 euros more for QC. No, keep your 10 euros. Even if we hire any QC, because it's not my eyes, you won't get the kind of attention that I can see. And when you hire somebody, the person is a job, it's not their stuff. So they will, if you are watching them, they will do their job. So if I'm watching them, then what am I doing myself? I do it myself, right? So that's just the way it is. When you hire somebody to do something, and it's to them it's a job, then more often than not, you don't expect the person to be devoting 1,000%. And I that's what I demand of people who are going to be working with me. They need to be giving me their 1,000%, not 100%. So that's just me. Yeah, go ahead. You found to say something?
Yeah. I think this is a very generic topic of management in general. It's nothing to do with diecast, but how do we have employees? How do we trust that they do the job? And I don't think we should, or I shouldn't be going into too much detail on that. But
Yeah.
I would imagine that there are ways still to achieve quality from an employee, quality output, and of course there's terms such as KPIs, and just making sure that, for example, you could set measurements points like the number of defects and recalls from your distributors or retailers. That's some key measure. So if you can start measuring the quality against that, but at the end of the day, you have to balance that the money and the time spent in managing that employee against the defect and recall rate itself. And that I think you have an idea. You would have an idea already. I certainly don't have an idea. Just my personal experience, there are small niggling little issues on some of the models, but in general, I
Right.
think we are happy. But nonetheless, you would know what I think there should be perhaps confidential information that you have about your own company, and you should keep monitoring how the things evolve. And if you get too high a recall rate, then that's definitely something you will be taking up with the factory. And then you have to see if that's too much, then maybe at the end of the day it's worth having somebody who you then measure. You tell that person it's your job to deal with the factory. It's your job to check all the models and make sure that the quality is there. But I know it's easy to say, but you are on the ground. You know how the actual reality is. And of course, I think you're right that you, more than anybody else, has the eyes and the practice and the experience to see each and every detail on a model. But nonetheless, again, that's not it's not rocket science. If if you don't mind
Yeah,
my
it's
saying,
not rocket science.
no,
Yes,
no, no, checking a model. And I'm sure you could train somebody who is diligent and dedicated, but it's a tedious job. Of that, I think none of us have any doubt. So it's a difficult question, but I would imagine there are solutions to quality. First of all,
yeah,
the factory
yeah,
must be doing the quality checks themselves, and
sure,
second of all, if that continues to work, fantastic. If not, then I'm sure you have
sure.
ideas in mind to achieve that.
Right. So
Yeah.
the new SU-24 has been spot on. Thank you very much, David. Will you be doing any others? Of course, we are. And you've noticed why we have a little bit of a hiatus for the Fencer production is because from the first wave and second wave, we actually stopped production and retooled certain aspects of it. That's why if you are a Fencer collector that you have followed from the first wave until the recent camouflage Russian, you'll notice that the recent one is so much more sturdy than previous in terms of the tightness of the wings. So back in the day, on the first, second wave, you have wings that has that clanky metal sound as it sweep, and I didn't want that, so that was rectified. And then right now, what you have is a very taut swing wing mechanism inside. It's not really a mechanism; it's just two meshing, parts. So you will notice that, and of course, we are also tightening up on certain aspect of the elevators that it was might be loose back in the first few waves, and currently it is all tight. So that is being done, and we're just having to plan. That's what I was asking for you guys input, because I'm planning to do some Iraqi and Iranian models of the Fencer in the coming wave. So yeah, so that I would definitely be doing that, so no worries there. And let's see. So Garrett, right? So on the new tooling, will the F-14 get the ability to sweep into the over sweep for deck? Yes, that's like what I mentioned. Yes, we are incorporating the parking angle, so that is, we will do it. That's the answer. All right. You can just chime in if you have anything to add. I'm just running through the questions. So Garrett also added, will if so, will there be a stop and you can put the model in sweep mode without going into over sweep? All right, so there's no stop. It's up to you. I mean, it's a model. It's not really a drone or some mechanical thing. So you just simply sweep it, and you can all the way or not all the way. That's the mechanism. So what weapon accessories will be with the fitter? So again, once I get that fitter tooling addressed, then we can go ahead and talk about the next step. Otherwise, it's still too early, and I'm just gonna be. I don't like giving empty promises, so that's just me. Okay, so then we came to the technical difficulties. We're out for a while. Let's see, we were out from 2:40 a.m. to about 10 minutes. So I think that's about it. That's all the questions that we have. I think we've covered pretty much everything for this stream. I'm so sorry for that kerfuffle where the computer went off. I'd like to thank Onza, right? Did I pronounce it correct this time?
Uzair.
Uzair. So sorry, Uzair. I gotta remember it. Okay, so Uzair Thank you so much for joining the stream. You have anything to add before we call it a night?
First of all, not a major things, not a lot of major things to say. Just want to thank you. I know it's super late, as you just mentioned, where you are right now, and it's a very convenient time for me over here, and I think other people listening or watching in from Europe or North America, it's a good time. So we really appreciate your, as I said before, you are burning the midnight oil and taking this comments and feedback from us. So thank you very much for having me here, Noel, and listening into some of my suggestions and feedbacks. And second of all, I will only close by saying that really exciting to see what comes next on both the Tomcat and you have a bunch of models announced, of course, and some really ambitious subjects such as the B-58 Hustler, which is super
Yes.
ambitious. And for me, I've been sort of chasing you and bothering you, and just saying, when can we have the F-22 Raptor? That for me
Right.
is like another grail model whenever and if you decide to do that. So that's what I will leave it, saying that one day I hope that we get really detailed metal F-22 Raptor from you, and maybe not F-15. That's oversaturated in the market in many ways. But that Raptor has been done only by, and it continues to be done by one other company, and I think it can have a lot of improvements done in terms of the sharpness and the paint. So that's my thoughts on on Calibre's output. And again, good luck with the next set of changes and the engineering challenges. And I will have some further thoughts to share on the F-14 changes. I will send you an email later, Noel, so we'll connect
Okay.
and we'll
All right.
continue the dialogue. But thanks for your time now, and wish you a very good night and good rest.
Yes, and also to all those who tune in to the live stream, thank you very much for joining us. Again, wish you guys also a pleasant day ahead. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next stream.
Yep. Thanks, Noel. Bye bye.
All right. Bye bye.